But right now, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Curtis. I'm here to host New Orleans Game Developer Meetup. This is the month of August, if you're unaware. Can someone press the capture card scene on OBS on the iPad? Excellent, thank you. So if this is your first time here, welcome. It's good to see you. It's good for you to be here. We're the New Orleans game developers. There should be more things on the slide, but there's not. So pretend it says a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to say what it said anyway. So we meet every month on the third Thursday for the Game Dev Meetup, which is what's happening right now. We also have a Discord, which you can join by scanning this QR code with your cellular telephone device. And if you're in the Discord, you'll know that we have a weekly hack night on Tuesday nights, and we have a weekly show and tell here at CK, where we are currently at 7:30 p.m., hosted by one of our wonderful presenters today, who you will see shortly. We also do game jams. We do a bunch of cool stuff. If you make video games and you're like kind of near New Orleans, you should come hang out with us. We do a lot of stuff. We make stuff. We help you guys make stuff. Yeah, and I think that's everything important. This is where we would say community announcements. I don't believe we have any. Am I correct? Great. Does anyone have anything they would like to announce? No? Does anyone have any reason why these two should not be wed? Okay. Well, that'll do it for my spiel. I guess what's left now is to introduce our wonderful guests here tonight, which is the Pixel Dash. Is that correct? The Pixel Dash? That's how y'all usually do it? Okay. So Pixel Dash Studios is here to present for us. They're based in Baton Rouge, which is Baton Rouge, red stick in French. They make video games. They've been doing it. How long y'all been in business? Why don't y'all come here? Why don't y'all come over here?
Is this an interview now?
It can be if you want. We can just like talk about our feelings too.
Are you like Dr. Phil or?
No, I don't have a college degree.
That checks out.
It does. So how long y'all been in business?
We've been in business for 11 years now.
You know, why don't you just like talk about, this is your company, why don't you talk about it? This is Jason Tate, everybody. Give it up for him. Or don't. You guys are rude.
Not everybody at once. Yeah, so I'm Jason. I'm the co-owner at Pixel Dash Studios. Like Curtis said, we're a game studio based in Baton Rouge. Although more recently, we've really been a remote studio, doing a lot of remote work, and with a lot of developers that are spread out across Louisiana, from Lafayette and New Orleans. Quite a few people here now in New Orleans, as well as Raceland. Yes, represent. Let's see. Hey, we got a new slide. Yeah, so like I said, we've been in business now 11 years. We primarily do work for hire development and co-development with other studios. So as you can see here, some of our, go back up. So yeah, these are some of our clients that we've worked with over the years. Microsoft and In Exile, which is here in New Orleans. We've worked with them now on 4 different titles. We've worked with, we just started working with this game studio on a Big Fish game called Evermerge. We work with, in the past, Discovery Channel. We've done work for Exxon Mobil in the VR space. And working with MGM, through another local company here in New Orleans, Top Right Corner, that we've worked with a couple of projects, including Bill and Ted and Child's Play VR experience. Next slide. This is some of our most recent projects, co-dev projects that we've done. So Ruby Arafel is a 2D side-scrolling action beat-em-up that we've worked with WayForward Technologies. We've done quite a few things with them in terms of programming, some 3D art, and some other stuff with some of our developers worked on that title. We have a title for The Walking Dead that we worked with Pipeworks Studios. That one actually just released last month on Facebook. So you can actually go ahead and check that out. It's The Walking Dead, The Last Mile on Facebook for anyone who plays Facebook games. And then we're also currently working with Status Pro on an NFL VR game. And that game's going to be coming out very soon. Basically, if you've ever played Madden, but in VR. Next. So in addition to work for hire and sort of co-dev and other stuff that we do, we also have our own IP, and which was a game called Road Redemption. It's a co-owned game with EQ Games, which was another studio based here in New Orleans previously, now in Georgia. But that game is on PC and console. We've sold over 1 million units. And actually, very soon, we're going to be releasing a mobile version as well, so keep an eye out for that. I will be sure to let everyone know when that title finally launches. So that's just a little bit about our studio. If you want to know any more about us, please don't hesitate to come and talk to me. But really tonight, we want to talk about one title that we have in development in particular, and that's a game called Hip Hop Golf. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to some of our developers who are working on Hip Hop Golf. So let me bring on Keith.
Hi, I'm Keith Tiernan. I'm the product owner and designer, one of the designers on Hip Hop Golf. I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover today and talk about the gameplay and some of the initial overview concepts for the game. So we'll just give you a quick intro to the game and the gameplay, go through some of the visual styles and the audio design, and then we'll talk about some of the kind of technology that we're using to make the game work. So Hip Hop Golf's a hip-hop-themed mobile golf game where players can play against friends on procedurally generated courses anywhere in the world. We'll get a little more into the procedural generation stuff in a minute. The features of the game: single-player and asynchronous multiplayer, procedurally generated maps created from real-world map data, dynamically generated course layouts. We'll have time of day and weather eventually, hopefully generated from real-world time of day and weather data. Player progression systems, leaderboards and achievements, and daily challenges, just to keep retention going in the game. Let me switch to the next slide. So overview of gameplay. So it's a mobile golf game. It's not a sim-based game. There's a lot of sims out there. It's more with some arcade twists added to it. So what we're trying to do is create and play matches anywhere in the world is like a key feature of the game. The arcade twist is we've added in some like power-ups and some arcade elements that go into the gameplay that you'll see in some of the images later. Interactive game objects and in-game collectibles that are also in the game that help give it a little bit more of a kind of an arcade twist over like a straight, just kind of like golf game sim. For long-term engagement, we have a level-up system, player progression, dozens of items that you can unlock and earn, achievements that you can pursue. There'll be leaderboards that are global, friends-based, and bracket-based that'll refresh and cover different categories of achievement. And then a daily challenge system that is basically something that you can come to every day. It's a fresh one-hole challenge that's got like a time limit to it or a specific twist to it that it'll be very difficult to do, but if you achieve it in that day, you'll get a certain reward for that day, and you can come back every 24 hours. It'll reset, and there'll be a new challenge that you can do. I'm going to hand it over to Dex, and he's going to talk a little bit about the visual style of the game, how we integrated some of the hip-hop themes in, and how audio plays a role in the game.
Hey. Nice, thanks. So, yeah. Hip-hop golf, as is in the name, grabs influence from classic hip-hop aesthetics, immersing players in a world that is flashy, rhythmic, and vibrant. And, so basically, we were trying to make you feel as though, when you were in the world, you were immersed in what you would think like a hip-hop kind of augmented reality would be. we took a lot of influences from like games like Mirror Edge, like Jet Set Future, with like tune shading, kind of like graffiti effects, on-screen effects, and just kind of like an overall kind of cartoony vibe, I guess you could say. Thank you. Yeah, so the environment's super key. There are many different environment types in the world, obviously, and since hip-hop golf is procedurally generated, we wanted that to reflect in all of the different, I guess you could say, environment and weather biomes. So with that being said, there's stuff that's going to be more urban. There's going to be things that are more like deserty or more like, you're in the forest, more rural, things like that. And so, we're trying to very carefully make sure that each type of scene, environment, still has that kind of hip-hop hook, no matter what it would be. Because obviously in a city, you're going to see more billboards. There's going to be more street art. There's going to be much more of a congestion of, like, art on things, art on walls and on skateboards and stuff like that. Whereas, like, in a rural scene, it's going to be more trees and things like that. So you might see art on, like, benches and, like, dumpsters or things like that, sheds. So really just trying to play up to that. And that reflects, like, in our assets and in our, and in our skybox types, too, which you'll see later on. Yeah, and this is just more stuff. So, like, you can see here, this is what I was talking about with, like, the skybox halftone pattern. So that's, like, part of our art style, which I'll describe in a little more detail in a second. But, like, doing creative stuff like that, where, like, we're in this cartoon world, so we can take advantage of kind of these very, like, fantastical aspects and really exploit them. Thus, you can see with, like, the billboards and, like, the kind of, I guess you could say, art installations with, like, the speakers and things, the trumpet kind of, on the building, the drums on top of the building, the big shoe, like, stuff like that. You can keep sliding. And yeah, just a continuation of that. So visual effects, I spend a lot of time doing this. This is, like, mainly my focus. And I just wanted to create effects that, looked like street art, looked like graffiti, again, in an augmented reality, something that you could feel like you were seeing in real time, animated in front of you. And so we kind of had to develop specific art elements to get there. And, it came down to, like, hard, thick lines, kind of colorful gradients, and that halftone, like, transparent pattern that I was talking about. So you'll see, like, in a lot of the visual effects and some of the art, like, that, kind of carries through. So we have different types of effects. One main one is golf ball trails. You'll see in a lot of these golf games or these, like, sports mobile games where, after you shoot a shot, they'll have a trail behind. So this was, like, a perfect opportunity to implement some of those artistic stylings. So here's, like, these kind of graffiti trails, thinking like, you would on a wall where you might see, like, a big whooshing graffiti trail or something like that. So we're trying to emulate that. Power-ups was another thing. And we kind of had to get creative after a while. It's funny because, we started with, like, the trails and simple stuff like that. And, the more and more we did stuff, the more we were kind of like, okay, we have to lean into, like, what makes this, hip-hop or what can make this musical, and just really get creative with the idea. So, like, with the power-ups, I was trying to make sure that, each one had some kind of something that, alluded to hip-hop in some kind of way, or alluded to music, was musical, or, at least was in the art style of. So, like, in these three power-ups, you can see, like, the one all the way to the right, it's like a freeze, and that's supposed to be like a b-boy, doing a freeze move, which is, like, something in breakdance culture. It's like an actual move, so we're applying, like, our freeze power-up to that effect. And yeah, you can go ahead to the next one, just to give you an example. We have impact effects, too, so, like, stuff like water and sand and things like that. And this was cool doing this stuff because when we started this project, we were using Unity's standard edition, which, like, visually is not as impressive. And then we switched to what's called URP, Universal Render Pipeline, and that allowed for more creativity with, like, shaders and things like that. So I was able to do a lot of, like, animation with some of these VFX. Okay, I'm gonna play. Can we exit this and play a video? Hold on. So we'll play this. So here's, like, an example of some of the power-ups and, like, kind of how we use them. That's our shot controller. So that's one right there. Let me play it one more time. But basically, yeah, you activate a power-up, you pull it back, then thus activates what the power-up does. This one's a freeze, so when you land, it freezes on the ground, thus creating that. But this was fun because I got to use Shader Graph, Unity Shader Graph, which I had never done before in the project. So that was cool. All right, so moving right along. Okay. Oh, okay. Awesome. All right. Let me go next slide. Okay. Yeah. So environment effects was another cool thing. So because it was a mobile game, we had to do a lot of creative stuff to kind of like keep our performance down and like, not overload the system. And I was worried with like particle effects, especially with weather, that was going to be a problem. So instead of actually just rendering the weather effects like, over top of the ball or just like in the scene, we did a camera overlay. And so I had like a separate camera that renders on top of the mains scene camera and displays these VFX. And it basically mimics what the main camera does in like a smaller form like fashion. So like if the camera turns, then the weather VFX camera will turn a little bit. And if it moves up, it goes down, like same thing. So I'll show like one more video giving you an example of that. So that's some rain. Then we have like our bird's eye view. Then that's our in-game view. You can see it like changes with the view. I rotate the camera. It all rotates. But that's just an overlay. There is no rain really there. All right, cool. Cool. All right, and lastly, I'll just touch on real quick the audio design. So that obviously plays a huge part in hip hop golf because it's hip hop and music is, it's music. So sound effects were cool. We had an opportunity to create a lot of unique sound effects for like, our in-game menus and stuff like that. When you select anything, we tried to do stuff with like record scratches and like, using classic like hip hop drum samples, like 808s and things like that, and just kind of like really playing up some of those vibes. So I'll play like a few sound effects. So this is when you get a hole-in-one. This is just when you get like a regular hole. Oh. No, that's not. All right. So yeah. So stuff like that. Cute stuff like that. Can you move to the next slide? And lastly, just the music in general. So we're still kind of figuring out, what we want to do with it, but we definitely right now, like we have music for our main menu. We have music that kind of plays from these boom boxes, like when you're in the game, like playing. And then when you finish a match, we have music that plays for that. And so, I just kind of was inspired to do a lot of like, old school, like almost, if anyone remembers, like, Toonami, kind of like old school, lo-fi hip hop to chill and write your thesis to, that kind of thing. So I'll play like one or two of those just to give you an idea. This one we actually ended up using for the main menu. Okay, and I'm going to hand it off to Luke with procedural. Oh, no, I'm sorry, back to Keith. Handing it back to Keith for procedural systems.
All right, so I'm probably the least technical guy in the crowd, but I'm going to explain this procedural course generation thing to you as best I can. So in addition to what Dex just explained, trying to get like a kind of a hip-hop vibe into a golf game and like using the art and the audio to kind of infuse the world with a hip-hop theme, another big goal of the game was to try and be able to create a course anywhere in the world using real-world map data. So initially we were using Google Maps, but then Google Maps got no longer supported. So we kind of did our prototype. It was using Google Maps that didn't get supported anymore, so we had to figure out an alternate platform to work with. And we came across Mapbox, And so the challenge is that you're trying to build a playable course anywhere in the world, not knowing on our end where the buildings are going to be, where the roads are, where any other obstacles are in that part of the world. And then also try to make it feel like that place in the world. So, if you're in a city, you want it to feel like a city. If you're in the desert, you want it to feel like the desert. So how are we going to figure out how to achieve that given the wide variety of variables that we had to work with? So what Mapbox does is it's pretty much like what you would see on any of your navigation programs. It puts roads in, it tells you where buildings are, it'll let you know where businesses and stuff are, types of roads, and it tags everything with an identifier of some sort. So you'll know if it's a main road or a pathway. I think it can do residential versus commercial businesses, some information like that. So we had to figure out how to take all the data that it provided and turn it into data that was useful for us to create an environment that made sense to the player, and also be able to create a fun, playable golf course around that environment. Let's go on to the next. So the system, and so E.T. Garcia is our lead programmer on the project, and he came up with this grid world system. And basically what he took was, when Mapbox puts something out, he lays a grid over it and then identifies everything that falls within each of the grid squares. So the first thing that we had to do is put a tee box down and put a putting green down, and then find an unobstructed path between those 2 points. And that's what the yellow line is that you see in this diagram here. The other thing that you'll see is the border around it. So in order to not have to load an infinite amount of real estate or let a player just kind of wander off and explore the neighborhood they're in, we just created kind of an invisible boundary or a subtle boundary that they have to stay within that constitutes the fairway and the hole that they're playing at the time. In the game, you can play up to 3 holes. It's a mobile game, so we want to keep it kind of short, playable, fun, easy to use. So we lay in the tee box in the hole. Then the next pass that the game does, it looks around and it starts to lay in does the path make any hard turns, or are there any opportunities to put in these sort of arcade-like elements, which are boost pads, springboards, warp pipes, things like that make the game somewhere between a mini golf experience and a true golf experience. So it does that pass, and then the final pass it goes, well, where am I in the world? And it uses what they call land use tags in Mapbox, and those tags will be things it'll say sand or wood or green, and it gives a pretty broad definition. So we had to kind of start to figure out what the tags that Mapbox were using were and translate those into ones that consolidated the environment for us so that we could create a tag system on our end for things like skyboxes, terrain textures, and any environmental prop that we created, and put tags on those assets so that the system would then go through and say, the Mapbox tags are, desert related. So it would go through and look for all the desert related tags on our assets and give those the highest weight. If those didn't exist for a certain topic of prop, for instance, it might go to the next weighted one, or it might go to nothing if there was no suitable replacement for it. So what the system does is does a few passes when it's creating the course. It determines where it is, and it starts to just lay in the proper skybox, the proper terrain, and starts bringing in assets instead of a tree, it'll put in a cactus or something like that, or a palm tree, to give it the right environmental feeling. The other things that we're working on is, so right now there's day-night. Currently it's the local device time, but we're going to hope to put in time that's accurate to the location that you're playing in. So if you're, here in New Orleans, but you're playing in some place that's many time zones away, you'll play in their day-night setup. And the same with weather. Right now we have weather actually works in the games, but it's randomly generated. So the game will decide whether it's raining or snowing, and it'll put in the proper skybox and the camera effects that Dex showed earlier. And we're going to try to add more gameplay impactful elements in for weather as well. So you might have a wetter environment or snow piles and things like that that might affect your gameplay more. Yeah, I mean that's generally you can see up here some of the the different biomes. Like that's a procedurally generated kind of test desert biome. So it's putting in all the right assets, but it's kind of testing out what kind of things can be populated in the environment. There's some twilight and stormy weather skies and stuff like that. And then for day-night, we'll have different textures for buildings. Try to create a different nighttime environment that's also got kind of a hip-hop vibe. So darker building textures with neon colors and bright window lights and things like that. And that's pretty much it for procedural. That's basically my level of knowledge on procedural. If you have more questions about how it works, we can hook you up with ET and he can probably answer them. Luke's going to talk about the back end for our network platforms and how we're maintaining user data and things like that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luke. I am one of the programmers here at Pixel Dash, and I'm here to talk to you about how we set up our backend server. So we decided to use Microsoft's PlayFab, and they advertise it as everything you need to build and operate a live game. So what do they offer? So they provide leaderboards and statistics, real-time analytics, economy, and matchmaking in groups. So we're going to start with the leaderboards and social play. So PlayFab already has built-in leaderboard support, so it makes it very easy for you to just plug in player accounts to these leaderboards, and it makes it even easier for us as programmers and developers to make a menu like this, because we only have to make it fancy, and you can easily just plug in all of the data, and it keeps track of all of the player usernames and all their scores, so it makes it very seamless to create menus like this in the friends list. So next are the real-time analytics. This is kind of more of a so-called debug kind of part of it. So we use something like this, the PlayStream dashboard, and you can track all in-game behaviors by account or aggregate. So you can check things like session times, how many matches you've played, and any kind of transactions you make in the game. So here, this graph right here can look at the average screen time for a player. So if we notice that a lot of players are not finishing, say, a 3-hole game, us as developers can look at this graph and make adjustments to the game of, maybe we need to make the play time shorter. So it's really useful for certain things like that. So next is the economy. Again, kind of like the leaderboards, PlayFab has a built-in economy management system. So you can manage your inventory, how much money you have, and any kind of transactions that you have. So PlayFab already knows, say, if you purchased 3 of these golf balls, and it makes it easy for us to implement the UI and just saying that, hey, you own it. So these 3 golf balls right here in the middle on the right-hand side, they don't have a price tag on it because you own the golf ball. So it makes it easier for that. And then on the purchasing side, same thing. We have a in-game currency purchasing system, and it's just built right in, so it makes it seamless for us developers. So the last thing is the matchmaking in groups. So on this right-hand side here, this is what you would see on the PlayFab server. Is these are all lists of multiplayer games, so they have their own unique ID and their own unique match name. So we can keep track of anything that goes on in the game at a given time. So we can track multiplayer progress, new invites, past results. And this is one of the main key features of the game, is to have a multiplayer game that's asynchronous and that you can play with your friends. So say if I start a game that's a 3-hole match, I don't need to play all 3 holes in one session. I can play 1 hole and put it down and complete it at a different time. Is there any questions that you would like to ask any of us?
For the stream, the question was, do you know when this game will be released?
So the game currently is in alpha stage. We just kind of wrapped up our Apple milestone, so it's going to be released next year sometime. We're hoping to coordinate it with kind of the 50th anniversary of the creation of hip hop. So that's kind of the goal at the moment.
Do you mark the creation of hip hop?
That is a very good question.
Is it Grandmaster Flash?
You can Google that and then find the answer to that. But
I'm saying Grandmaster
the
Flash.
history of hip hop. It started in the Bronx, New York, on the streets. Somebody brought some turntables out and plugged it into the street light. That's all I know. I don't know.
Do we have any questions?
Is this an original IP?
So this is original IP, although it's this is a project owned by a local company in Baton Rouge, Duck Pond Technologies. So we're essentially contracted by them to develop it.
Awesome.
How does PlayFab compare to other Unity networking systems like Proton or WebSockets for game objects? Do any of y'all have any expertise in that?
So it's very different. So PlayFab is essentially a kind of like more or less a back-end database solution. So it kind of replaces any server back-end that you might have to build yourself. You know, if you're building your own database, your own server. It's primarily made for kind of asynchronous communication and sort of data storage on the back end.
It's not necessarily like a good real time
It's
multiplayer
not, no,
solution.
It's not real time
Okay.
networking. No.
Shucks.
Still looking for a solution to that on Unity, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hate on the Unity website. If you like look for a guide on how to make a networked Unity guide, a networked Unity game, they give you a flow chart, and basically it says use Proton, and everything. Yeah, and Proton sucks. I'm just kidding. They're great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we chose PlayFab because it's one of the most popular, sort of like most well-supported backends that you can, you know, it's built on Microsoft Azure. It's owned by Microsoft, so you know, if you don't mind the corporate overlords.
I might have missed this, but do you get collision data for the course from Mapbox?
So kind of the way it works is it's based, the buildings are based on like the height maps of the maps themselves. So like you get essentially like a mesh and a mesh collider that's like based on the height maps for the building. So you get buildings that are like height accurate, but not, you know, it's not like a satellite data level accurate.
But it'll provide you with like a box collider for a building and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
So the game targets mobile, right?
Yes, it's iOS and Android.
I guess this would be a question for Dex. What have the limitations of mobile development imposed on like creative choices for the art style and like effects you can do? Or I mean, phones are pretty strong now, so like maybe you don't have to make any concessions at all.
No, definitely still had to make some. I was shocked because when we switched over to URP, I was like, oh, like, you know, I had toyed with the idea of like, oh, maybe I can use shader graph, but then like it was a mobile game, so I was like, I don't know, but you know, I decided I was like, whatever, throw caution to the wind and just try it and see what happens. And I was able to do like some shader graph where I would, you know, because I do a lot of coding too, like a lot of like tech art stuff, so like I'll end up, you know, using shader graph in tandem with like code and try to like animate stuff and, you know, make stuff like grow and shrink, whatever, like kind of like that. And I found that most of the stuff that I was trying to do, I was able to do. The only like really big challenges was just that, you know, it's mostly an unlit game. Like there's post-processing and there is some like light data, but for the most part, like I tried to just stay away from that. So like everything I was doing, I was trying to like make sure that I was able to make stuff look like it was lit up or that it was vibrant, like without it actually being lit. So I feel like that was like the hardest challenge. And then of course like the weather VFX, that was a huge one because it's just like I'm not a mathematician. I'm not someone who like understands vector math or like I guess like grid data super well. But so I had to get creative. Had to borrow basically the main camera's data and just kind of tweak it through code until I got it happening somewhat to my liking. But I feel like that's the biggest challenge, like doing stuff where I have to then code and like go outside of my realm.
Oh yeah. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Were you raising your hand to ask a question? That was a no, thank you. Okay. That was a visual gag you couldn't see on the camera because it's pointing to our fine guest. Anyone? No? Okay. I mean, do y'all have anything else you wanna plug? Got some choice words for John Bell Edwards?
Let me tell you about politics. Yeah. Let's see. If anyone might be interested in our Baton Rouge IGDA meetup that we have monthly, anyone in Baton Rouge interested, come check that out. We meet monthly in Baton Rouge at the Acme Oyster House. We missed a great meetup last month. We had the Academy of Interactive Entertainment presenting that. Other than that, I don't have anything else to plug.
You guys hiring?
Yeah, are you guys hiring?
I will say we are always on the lookout for new talent. So certainly if you're interested in a job in game development, definitely let me know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, thank y'all so much for coming. Can we get a round of applause for Pixel Dash? I hope the applause came through on the microphone because I'm very proud to have an actual crowd in the building. But thank you everyone for joining us. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an outro planned. I don't plan. Yeah, see you next month. Speaking of next month, can we say that we're changing look? Okay, I'll say it. And if I can't say it, then someone will sue me. But next month, we should be in a new location. As we can tell from the size of the crowd, we're sort of outgrowing the good old Sea Cave. We'll still have show and tell here every week. We love the Sea Cave, and we appreciate everything they've done for us as an organization. But I believe starting next month, we'll be able to start having the monthly meetup at the offices of Turbo Squid or Shutterstock. I don't know how I should say it. It's one of those names, Shutterstock by Turbo Squid. There we go. I like the backwards way better. But that'll be sort of in the Captiville region of the CBD. If you're an old head, you remember where the meetups used to be. It's kind of like there. It's like Magazine in Captiville by the federal courthouse. And if I'm wrong and we can't be there next month, we'll be here next month. So we'll just have to wait and see. But all signs are pointing we'll be there. But thank you, Jason. Thank you, Dex. Thank you, everyone from Pixel Dash.
Thanks for having us.
Thank the Lord Jesus in heaven.
Thank you, Curtis, for having us. Thank you for
of course
putting this on. Thank you, Calder. Represent the Discord.
And I guess that's it. Thank you all for joining us. Go to NewOrleansGameDev.com or join our Discord or do something.